Conversation with Petrie Hosken.
And as it's a Wednesday, of course, that means that the LBC Parliament is now in session. In the studio with me this evening, I have Karen Buck, who's Labour MP for Regent's Park and Kensington North. Good evening.
Good evening.
Looking very regal, sitting there. David Burrows, Conservative MP for Enfield Southgate. Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you again. And a new boy. We promise not to bully you or pick on you too much. Ed Fordham, who's a prospective parliamentary candidate for Hampstead and Kilburn for the Lib Dems. Good evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. We'll kick off this evening talking about unemployment because the figures came out today. And I was watching this on the news this morning when a member of Parliament, I won't name, spun it to make it sound really good. That the number of people out of work has increased by 30,000, but what a joy that was, apparently, according to a Labour minister. Youth unemployment rate reached a record high of almost 20% today, as the jobless total continued to increase, although at a slower pace. The figures make grim reading, particularly for those of you listening who are amongst them. Let's try and remember these are people, not just numbers, as we go around the table this evening. Karen Buck, is this something to be rejoiced that an extra 30,000 people are unemployed?
No, you won't be surprised to hear me say no, of course it isn't. Unemployment is one of the reasons that I got into politics, was my distress at seeing what was happening to unemployment in the late 1970s.
It's the only job you could get. All right,
Could try. That's my one then. Okay, partner. Absolutely, the waste of lives and the damage that unemployment does, particularly to young people, because once they have been out of work for a while, it's catastrophic for their sense of hope and their views about their future. So no, it isn't. I think, to be fair, it is also right to say that unemployment being an indicator that trails some way behind the broader economic news, that if the level of unemployment is beginning, the rate at which unemployment is increasing is levelling off, that is a hopeful sign that maybe the worst of this tranche is over, as long as we get the next stage of our economic strategy right. And that means you do not go into major cuts mode now, when we still don't know for sure that we can avoid a second stage of recession if we get this all wrong. So we've got to deal with this unemployment in terms of
the cuts you're referring to. They're the ones that Gordon Brown has been suggesting to the welfare state.
We know that over the longer term we have to deal with this deficit in a number of ways. All the parties have got different views on how quickly they're going to do that and where they would have to make savings or in some cases increase revenue. So we all know that there's a different approach, but an approach to tackling the deficit on all sides. So absolutely, but what we have to do is make sure that we prioritise tackling unemployment at the heart of an economic strategy, and we do not want to be in a situation where we are shedding huge numbers of additional jobs because we make the wrong kinds of cuts at the wrong time. So, that is going to not only not help the people who are unemployed now, but could lead us, frankly, into something that is more a depression than a recession a little way further down the line.
We might come back to you in just a moment about those leaked or sneaking through cuts that Gordon Brown is talking about, such as means testing childcare credits. We'll come to you first, though, David Burrows, Conservative MP for Enfield Southgate. The way I read this is that it's really bad that an extra 30,000 people are unemployed. However you try and spin it.
It's appalling.
It's appalling.
It wasn't so long ago when Gordon Brown said he was going to abolish youth unemployment, and it's appalling. I know it is about individuals, but the figures are appalling, that 1 in 5 young people are without a job, and I put it down to the ground in Enfield Southgate. Last week I was at the Jobs Centre Plus, and sadly business is booming from there. It is packed full, and often young people who wouldn't have expected to be there are there, people, graduates and others, and are there desperately looking for a job, and it's appalling. It's sadly worse here than in other countries. We have a significantly larger problem than Germany and France, and it's the problem. It's a symptom, sadly, of recession, which is deeper here, and it's one that we're struggling to get out of quicker. But we need to recognise that it's about creating new jobs, but also it's about ensuring we have the skills to get out there. We ourselves should be very much better in terms of developing the high skills, developing the technical skills, developing the apprentices that really haven't come through when the times were good, and now we're reaping the sad consequences of it.
Ed, where do the Lib Dems stand on the state of unemployment at the moment?
Well, I certainly think it's true that the big story is about youth unemployment, and that's the big sort of stark figure that really stands out. But I think it's also the human nature of it means that there are sort of 200,000 people who have graduated, lots of them are graduates, and to find there is no job waiting for them, which is the sort of promise. And
but that was always a possibility with this education policy, pushing so many people through degrees that are getting easier to do.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say, I was sitting here smiling because actually what Karen and Mark said could have been reversed 15 years ago.
David?
Sorry, David, my mistake. But as actually the Tory government apologised for youth unemployment and the Labour government attacked it. The reality is we've changed the expectations of employment, and the skill set that was often further education, that was often vocational, has been dropped off the academic agenda. And actually young people are leaving school, leaving college to find there isn't a job there. And that's the sort of root of the problem. And these are human stories. And on estates and in streets and terraces, sort of young people are getting up in the morning with nothing to do and no job to apply for. And it's literally 130, 140, 200 people per application. And it's a horrible market for those young people to grow up in.
Karen Butt, could we not have seen this coming, despite the recession? Let's park the recession for now. But I think Gordon Brown would quite like to park it. But just for the sake of this conversation, because we're talking about youth unemployment here, and slightly going after the education policy of this government, because there is now an expectation that if you've got a degree, you're expecting to get fast tracked into jobs. You've got many more people getting degrees, and there never were the jobs that could accommodate that level of people coming out through university. Is it not time really to look at the vocational courses, the different ways of educating children, so at least there are jobs available to them when they leave university? There's no point having a degree and being on the dole.
Well, no, there isn't, but up until this catastrophic global recession hit us, youth unemployment was at a record low. We had been doing extremely well. There was never a 100% success rate. There's always more to do, but we had been doing very, very well on that. Now, if you are going to compete as a country in the world economy, where a country like India is turning out more graduates in a week than we are turning out in a year, you have to raise your skill.
Karen, I have to point that out. You
have to ensure that you are raising your skills base across the board, and university education, which is not all by any means the ivory tower, the philosophy, the media, the sociology.
Yes, but that's what's been sold to a lot of young people: is get a degree and you'll get a job and you'll be rich and it'll be fine. And that is not the case. I
don't think that's what the government's line is. The government's line is absolutely rightly that we want to have a better educated workforce, and that means higher and further education for those people who can benefit from it.
And to get 50% into higher education as a target, come what may.
Well, but I'm not honestly sure that the Conservative Party's position is that different. I mean, you want to see more people going into further and higher education. I'm not.
But it
doesn't have to be the same kind of education, does it? This is what we, my friends and I talk about all the time. There are many ways to educate people to be useful citizens in this country.
The 50% of people who don't go to university also need...
what are they doing, Karen?
Also need to have access to skills and training, and many of them do.
Like apprenticeships.
They should be now.
This is a statistical fact that the number of apprenticeships has been soaring in the last few years.
But you can't play statistical facts with human lives. The reality is we need in-work training. We need apprenticeships and city and guilds.
And we have been increasing the number of apprenticeships.
No. Further education is something the Labour Party have just remembered after 12 years in government. And I smile. The Conservative Party cut further education for decades. I spent most of my student life protesting against Conservative Party cuts in further education. So I think it's a plague on both your houses, and the young people of today are suffering.